Well, hello, I'm Janet Morana, Executive Director of Priests for Life. Welcome to Just Ask Janet. Well, today I'm joined by two special men, okay, in my life here in the pro-life world. The first, of course, is our National Director, Father Frank Pavone. Father, welcome to the program.
Great to be here.
Okay. And of course, the other wonderful person that we're having with us is a dear friend of mine and Father Pavone's. Nobody has thundered on the floor of the House more than this congressman. He's been a wonderful friend of Priests for Life, but a champion for the unborn and for the women. And we're so privileged that he could take the time out of the busy schedule, running to the floor to vote and all the crazy things that goes on there all the time up on Capitol Hill, because we're going to give you important information that you need to know to get involved immediately, because so much is at stake now with this appropriations bill. So welcome to the program, Congressman Chris Smith from New Jersey. Chris, welcome.
Janet, so thank you so very much. And Father Pavone, Father Frank, great to see you again. And again, thank you for your tremendous work on behalf of the unborn and equally on behalf of their mothers.
So Chris, just to let people understand, I know you were in a bitter fight there on the House to protect the Hyde and Helms amendments.
Yes.
Of course, you guys lost that battle, and now it's going to go over to the Senate. But just to give people the history of this Helms and Hyde, could you just give a snapshot? Because most people don't understand how this affects the appropriation and spending bills. They just hear the words about taxpayer money for abortion or not for abortion. But can we have a little lesson?
Yeah, sure. Well, back in 1973, Senator Jesse Helms passed what's known as the Helms Amendment, and it said no direct funding for abortion overseas. Otherwise, we would be paying for abortion on demand in every country of the world. And as I think the polling shows that 77% of the people, and that is a very, very accurate poll by the Marist organization, are against funding abortions overseas. And yet we just lost in the U.S. House of Representatives the Helms Amendment. Now, I believe it's a temporary loss. We're hoping that the Senate will put it back in, and that means delaying this bill, eviscerating this bill called an appropriations bill. And then the Hyde Amendment in 1976, 3 years later, began a long journey of saying domestically we will not pay for abortions, whether it be in the Medicaid program or as other programs came online, like S-CHIP and other programs, that we would not pay for it there either. And the upshot is domestically, the evidence shows that about 60,000 children survive who would otherwise be aborted because the money was not there to effectuate their demise. So all told, it's about 2.4 million or more people who are in this country living because the Hyde Amendment was in effect. Now, from Hyde, we passed a series of other amendments. I offered an amendment to say no funding under the Federal Employees Health Benefits Program, which ensures about 8 million or so federal employees and their dependents with health insurance. That passed in 1983. That too was overturned last week by the House. The Bob Dornan Amendment on DC appropriations was also overturned. And so we are facing what I truly believe, Janet and Father Pavone, to be an existential threat to the unborn, not just on funding, but other bills that are pending. Should we lose the Senate even more if the Democrats pick up an additional votes, so they don't we can't stop things under the filibuster. And the other point would be my phone went off, and I'm sorry for that interruption.
Okay.
But there are several bills that are pending right now. One of them is called the Women's Health Protection Act of 2021, introduced by Judy Chu of California. It has 188 co-sponsors, and that legislation would say not just that the Roe versus Wade is now the law of the land by statute, not by Supreme Court fiat, but that any limitation or requirement to provide abortion or to get an abortion, any limitation whatsoever would be evisciated, would be gone. So that means informed consent, women's right to know laws, waiting periods, all of these amazing statutes that have been passed in the various states and to some extent by the federal government, but mostly in the states, would be gone. And we would have and conscience protection would also fall completely. And one thing that was in the appropriations bills last week, again, that there were 14 different amendments that were lost that have to be renewed each and every year, was the Weldon conscience protection. In other words, entities, Catholic hospitals, individuals, LPNs, nurses, and of course doctors, OBGYNs, would all be compelled to participate in abortion on threat of losing their job. This is coercion with the taxpayer. We're all paying for abortions if this becomes law, their side, the abortion side. And then the people in the field itself, healthcare practitioners, would all be coerced into participating in abortions with conscience protection nullified. So I look at it, Father, and both of you, as an existential threat to the unborn. And I can get into it further in terms of what's happening overseas and all the money, the billions of dollars that the abortion president, Joe Biden, will now focus on, empower the abortionists to do more damage to the unborn child in countries that are pro-life. And there are many pro-life countries in Africa, Latin America, and South America. All of them are at risk as well with this president and with this appropriations bill.
So, Congressman Smith, when you think of this now, the Helms, the Hyde, and these other good amendments were in place. This was bipartisan. Like, they survived the 8 years of Clinton, the 8 years of Barack Obama. And when Biden was in the Senate, he voted to uphold the Hyde and the Helms and everything else, correct? So what people have to understand is we always had bipartisan support for this, correct?
Oh, that's without a doubt. When I got elected back in 1980, there were about 80 or so pro-life Democrats who would join us on the Republican side and putting these bills and these amendments into law. As you mentioned, Janet, the president, then Senator Joe Biden, said that he voted in one constituent letter about 50 times to prohibit taxpayer funding for abortion. And he said we shouldn't be forcing all of us, those of us who are conscientious objectors, to pay for it. He has done a complete 180 degrees about face, and now he has become the abortion president, which is a tragedy beyond words.
It is a tragedy beyond words. And Congressman Smith, there's a context here, as you well know. For the first time back in the election season, the Democrat Party platform changed to actually explicitly include what has now happened, a call for the Hyde Amendment to be eliminated. So we see, of course, the problem with Biden personally and individually, but really, isn't it? It's a problem with the stance that the whole party has taken. It has become, as the years have gone on, and as the platforms have successively been published, more and more radically pro-abortion than ever. And a lot of our viewers ask, well, why? Of what benefit is it to these Democrats that they be so in love with baby killing? Is it that the money, I mean, we know that the money that goes into the abortion industry flows then into their political campaigns. I mean, that's got to be a big motivation right there. But how do you answer the question that people ask, what is this obsession with abortion that the Democrat Party has?
It's a great question, Father. I've been in the pro-life movement along with my wife since 1972. And I always believed if they just knew the truth, that an abortion dismembers a child, decapitates, takes off the arms and legs. It is a terrible act of mutilation of an unborn child's body. And of course, then there's chemical poisons and RU-46, which one of those drugs actually causes the child to die from starvation. No nutrients flow to the baby, and the baby dies. I am shocked that the Democrat Party has become the party of abortion. It has been taken over. It is a wholly owned subsidiary of Planned Parenthood, which itself has committed over 8 million abortions years to date, well over 330,000 every year in their clinics. But just to show you how duplicitous so many people can be in this issue, when we were arguing that the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare included abortion, we tried to get it out. We got an amendment passed. Matter of fact, my current bill, HR 18, the no taxpayer funding for abortion, besides making all of the pro-life riders permanent law, it also would reverse the abortion mandate that is in Obamacare. But just listen to this. This was an executive order on March 24th, 2010. The act maintains current Hyde Amendment restrictions governing abortion policy and extends these restrictions to the newly created health insurance exchanges. Strict compliance with prohibitions on abortion funding in health insurance exchanges. It specifically prohibits the use of tax credits and cost-sharing reduction payments to pay for abortion, except in the cases of rape, incest, life of the mother. You know who wrote that? Barack Obama.
Obama, right.
That was his executive order that he was able to shop around to a number of pro-life Democrats. It's really not worth the paper it's printed on, because the plain text of that law paid for abortion on demand. And even afterwards, when people were still in denial, we got the GAO, General Accountability Office, to look into it. And they found that over 1,000 of the plans, these are big plans throughout the country, were paying for abortion on demand, completely contrary to this bogus executive order. So for years, we've had some, like Obama, trying to act as if somehow they were pro-life. I remember I was at the debate with John McCain at the Saddleback Church in California with Rick Warren. And he was asked a question about, when does life begin? And he goes, oh, it's above my pay grade. Well, you got to make decisions. And he had already had made decisions in opposition to the sanctity and the preciousness of that little baby. And I believe, like you do, and you do such great work with the Silent No More Awareness campaign, that the other victim is always the mom, is always the mother. And particularly on the intermediate and long-term range time frame, because of all of the pain and agony that they suffer. But for a long time, many used to act as if they were with us, and then they would be voting when they got the opportunity against us. That's all gone. As you said, Father, the platform is a manifesto in favor of unfettered right to abortion. And many governors and others are now talking about, even, after the baby is born, if the mother does not want that child to continue living, then that child can be killed. I did a speech back about 10 years ago when two ethicists talked about after birth abortion.
I remember that, yeah.
The child is no different in terms of can't communicate, can't speak, has no dreams. We should wait for months, if not years, after the child is born to confer personhood. And then you could just kill the baby because birth is just an event that happens to an unborn child. It's not the beginning of life. And so, I think we're at a crossroads. And to everyone hearing this, we need to pray as we've never prayed before. We need to fast as we've never fasted before. We need to continue the education efforts. And right now, with this bill, now over on the Senate side, it's a series of bills, appropriations bills, as we call them, all of them eviscerating current pro-life prohibitions on public funding for abortion. They need to contact their senators. Don't think because that senator happens to be very pro-abortion, they need to hear from you respectfully and civilly, which I know you'll all do, but they need to be persuaded to cease going down this road that will lead to more dead babies and wounded moms. Let's not forget, Father, and you know this so well, and Janet, you as well, 62.5 million unborn babies have been killed in the United States since Roe versus Wade. That equates with every man, woman, and child living in Italy. I mean, the entire population. That's how many children have been killed as a result of Roe versus Wade.
Yeah.
So Congressman Smith, let's talk a little bit about, because I think pro-lifers get discouraged, especially those who live in states like California and New York, where they have
New Jersey.
two pro-abortion Democrat senators, and they question us all the time. Oh, should I really call Chuck Schumer? We know how he stands. He knows what he's going to vote. So I try to explain to them that you still have to tell them you want them to vote no on these appropriation bills because you don't want your tax money going. Because imagine if Schumer's office and the phones rang off the hooks, emails, letters, and phone calls. Do you think that would have some effect on him, or is he just too hardened to even? In other words,
no, it's a great question, Janet. I think it does have an effect, and I think it has an effect even if their vote is not persuadable. They realize that there's a political penalty that they could incur if they proceed down this line. I mean, this is radical pro-abortionism, the likes of which I haven't seen. And again, I've been in the movement since 1972, before Roe versus Wade, when New Jersey was thinking of legalizing abortion and New York State had already done so. So there's a real, members of Congress, House and Senate are very political. And if they realize that there was a groundswell of opposition to eviscerating the Hyde Amendment and all the other pro-life riders, as we call them, they ride on top of these appropriations bills, I think it could have a chilling effect. It might not, but it's worth the effort. We need to bear witness. We knew we did not have the votes in the House of Representatives, but I myself offered 4 amendments on the House floor that were not made in order, but I debated them anyway. I went to the Rules Committee, which governs what comes on the floor and what does not. And Tom Cole, a tremendous pro-life leader, he offered the Hyde-Weldon, and that we knew it would not be made in order and it would not be successfully realized. But every single Republican co-sponsored Tom Cole's amendment, just like every Republican is now backing H.R. 18, the No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion Act, which I've introduced. Parenthetically, it has passed the House on 4 separate occasions in 4 different Congresses. And what stopped it? The filibuster. So our hope is in the Senate, now that there's a pro-abortion effort that is unprecedented, that it will be the filibuster that will prevent these bills, including the Women's Health Protection Act of 2021, which is, again, Roe versus Wade, and then some, because it eviscerates, gets rid of, nullifies, overturns every single pro-life law at the state level.
So to go back to that question now,
Yes.
Congressman Smith, the Women's Health Protection Act, it's in the House. Is it getting introduced yet? Is it coming?
Yes, it's introduced. It has 100, and it was introduced on June 8th. It has 188 co-sponsors on the Senate side. There's already been a hearing on it. So there's deep concern, and especially if we were to lose a few senators, which would mean that the filibuster would be put at grave risk of being sustained, and the House stays in Democratic pro-abortion hands. The President of the United States and the Vice President are very strong supporters of this legislation. It could be signed into law. And the damage that will do, I mean, we know that lives have been saved. Parental notification, parental involvement statutes have been proven empirically. Michael New has done tremendous work in studies showing that the numbers of teenage abortions, minors abortions, drop significantly when there's parental involvement. All those laws are gone. Same with, like I said, conscience laws, informed consent. They word it in such a way that anyone can object on the abortion side, saying that those booklets and other things that informed consent often requires be given to a woman prior to that irreversible decision of abortion. That's all nullified as well. So one statute after another, and these are hundreds and hundreds of life-saving statutes gone overnight with this legislation. So it is an existential threat. I hate to use that word more than once, but it is to the lives and life of both the unborn child and, of course, puts their mothers at risk as well.
So how soon would Nancy Pelosi bring this bill to the House floor for a vote? Like, what's the timeline?
That's a great question. I don't know. right now, their focus is to nullify all existing pro-life funding bans and conscience protections. This bill, which was introduced previously, matter of fact, when it was introduced in 2018, it had 218 Democratic co-sponsors. So you only need 217. You only need 218 to win. And there's no filibuster, as everybody knows, in the U.S. House. But in the Senate, that remains, a defense for the unborn. But it could be gone, if they pick up a few seats in the Senate, which is why we need to rally behind our senators that are up for re-election and be especially focused on some of those opportunity seats, which again, in a more political format, we could talk more about, but not here. So I'm hopeful that we will have a great midterm election, but it's going to take a lot of prayer and hard work for that to happen. So,
Congressman Smith, you mentioned briefly your bill, and I want to focus a little light on that as well. You have been explaining that there are these many different riders on these appropriations bills. And what people need to understand is that every Congress, there are these multiple fights, right? These multiple battles, these multiple votes that have to try to preserve these pro-life protections, as they're called, protections on our tax money, and thereby protections on the babies and the moms and the families. But your bill simplifies this. No taxpayer funding for abortion. Explain how that would, in one piece of legislation, decide all these different appropriations battles.
Thank you, Father. What it would do is H.R. 18. Again, I've introduced it every year for about 10 years. It's passed the House of Representatives 4 times after very, very difficult debates on the floor of the House, but it never got passed in the U.S. Senate. But what the legislation will do is take every single one of the pro-life riders that are annually renewed and make them permanent. It would also take abortion out of Obamacare, like we tried to do way back when Obamacare was being considered, notwithstanding this bogus executive order that was issued by Barack Obama. We wanted language that said, wherever you come down on the Obamacare legislation, let's make it abortion free. And H.R. 18, which is backed by my colleagues, the entire Republican leadership in the House, and Roger Wicker has introduced it on the Senate side. This legislation would make it permanent. And talking about permanent, one of the things that the state foreign ops bill does, not only does it provide a significant more monies to population control, matter of fact, it puts it up to 760 million, and it says not less than 760 million. It provides 70 million to the UN Population Fund. One of my first amendments back in 1983 was to say no funding to any organization that is complicit with forced abortion in China or anywhere else, and any kind of coercion with sterilization or with abortion. That led to the Kampkasten law. This legislation that passed last week by the Democrats completely guts the Kampkasten law and provides more than doubles the amount of money that's even put into the budget, and they're intent on sending it there. It also includes the gender equity and equality funding, $200 million. Last year, Ivanka Trump was pushing hard for that money. Unfortunately, the money got in there, and that will become command and control for promoting abortion all over the world, because it's a huge amount of money for lobbying. Even though that's prohibited, it's going to be done. It is being done by this administration. And then I can't stress this enough. Helms says name the country. We don't pay directly for abortion. What the Mexico City policy said, which was done by Ronald Reagan in 1984 at the UN population meeting that occurred in Mexico City, hence its name, that we won't support any organization that performs or promotes abortion. And that means that International Planned Parenthood, Marie Stopes International, and other organizations chose, rather than provide their family planning, they decided we're not going to agree to that, because if they spend one dime in the performance or promotion of abortion, they lose funding from the United States government. That is not only reversed in the appropriations for foreign ops that happened last week, and I had the amendment to reverse their reversal, and it never was made in order, but they make it permanent. The Democrats will make it permanent that no president ever can put into effect a Mexico City policy. And it parallels the Global Her Act introduced by Barbara Lee, which would do just that statutorily. This does it by appropriations, different distinction without a difference. It would become permanent law. So again, the fight in the Senate is multifaceted, just like it was in the House. And our hope is that people will say over there, go to a CR, a continuing resolution, so that we continue last year's funding levels, maybe with some plus ups somewhere, but none of this policy language that, again, is anti-life, and instead continue the pro-life policy. And we're willing to fight for this as never before. And Senator Daines, Mitch McConnell, Daines heads up the pro-life caucus over on the Senate side, wonderful member, and a lot of other great members are going to be fighting very hard. And Mitch McConnell has been a great friend of the unborn. Look what he's done on the courts during the years of Donald Trump and getting those court picks into their positions, particularly in the federal court system, not just the Supreme Court. So there's our hope and prayer is that they will be able to hold on until the next Congress. And if we don't, and we lose the next Congress, Senate, and perhaps lose additional seats in the House, which I don't think will happen, that's when the unborn, as never before, will be under siege. And again, Father, this comes at a time when things like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which we have worked to try to get the abortion language out of it for years, they are now, it's called Agenda 2030. And Marie has done yeoman's work on exposing what that is all about. And we were at the United Nations several times talking to ambassadors and others, just saying, let's push clean water. Let's push safe blood, because blood supplies are very limited and often tainted in the developing world. Let's make sure that there are attendants available, birth attendants who are skilled to mitigate maternal mortality, and all the other good things. The first 1,000 days, which is actually a program that the UN endorses, from conception to the second birthday, with good nutrition and food supplementation, so that cognitive losses don't occur and stunting. All of this can happen, but it's antithetical to simultaneously saying, hey, let's kill the babies too. Let's provide choice. Choice to do what? To dismember and chemically poison a child to death. And during the floor debate last week on the floor of the House, I talked about the methods of abortion. If we talk around it, it's very easily to ignore it and to be desensitized to what is actually happening to that defenseless little infant girl or boy. So we're in a fight like I've been in Congress now 41 years. I've been pro-life caucus chairman or co-chairman for 39 of those years. We are in the most difficult battle for life that we have ever had. I would also say, Father, and I know you know this, but Archbishop Naumann, who heads up the pro-life efforts for the Catholic bishops, has done yeoman's work in mobilizing the church, as have others. You have done yeoman's work as well to make sure people realize that we've got to stand our ground and push forward. I mean, I'm not a defensive player. I believe in going on offense without being offensive, to treat the others with the respect that often we do not get in return. But I think we're called as believers to take that higher road. And we all do it. The pro-life movement, in my opinion, has been, and I used to be the director of the New Jersey Right to Life Committee years ago, made up of the most selfless people, the most wonderful people on the face of the earth. Fighting, as are so many of the women who are post-abortive, Janet, as you know so well, when they speak out, we all listen to hear what they have been through. And I deeply appreciate the work you've done there to bring that sensitivity to so many of all of us through the work of Priests for Life.
Well, Congressman Smith, what you just said, I want to just amplify a little bit. The selfless people behind this movement and behind the policies we've been discussing. We've been talking about various bills and policies and amendments that have names, but they have names because there are these dedicated, selfless, pro-life people behind them. And one of the things that's different about the conversation the three of us are having now and the conversation about these very same things that many others in America are having now is that the three of us were privileged and we have memories of knowing Jesse Helms. We talk about the Helms Amendment. I remember walking the halls of the Senate with Senator Helms, being in the elevators and talking with him about pro-life policy. And of course, you would have countless memories of him.
And
Henry Hyde, that's what I was going to say.
him.
Congressman Hyde being
Right.
with him on so many occasions, and the passion that he exemplified, the love that he was, very often at the point of tears in advocating for the unborn children. Congressman Dornan, his name came up, and of course yourself. I mean, your bill, your amendments. In fact, don't you hold one of the records of how many laws you've spearheaded over the years? How many has it been?
Well, I'm actually second in the U.S. House, 48 public laws, and then a lot of others that were enacted by adding them to larger bills like appropriations bills. But among them are, cord blood stem cell research in 2005, which has saved many lives. We all worked as a team, the whole pro-life movement, to get that enacted. As opposed to embryo destroying stem cell, which does not cure anyone, and it kills obviously the littlest of humans to derive their stem cells. But cord blood, obviously, Father, as you know, 4 million births a year approximately, and what's left behind, God in his tremendous love, the placenta and the umbilical cord blood is teeming with life-affirming stem cells that can cure a myriad of diseases, including leukemia, sickle cell anemia, and a lot of other diseases as well. So and disabilities. It's incredible, and it's all left behind. The afterbirth. So our bill in 2005 changed all that and said, let's use it efficaciously.
Well, Congressman Smith, thank you so much for joining us today and spending this amount of time with us. We're very privileged to have you. And Father, before we go, I just want to remind our viewers to please go to stopabortionnow.org. That's stopabortionnow.org. You sign up for our action alerts, because then we will tell you when congressmen like Congressman Smith, the House, when we need you to be making those phone calls, and the Senate side. So go to stopabortionnow.org and you will get action alerts from us, because like Congressman Smith said, it's up to all of us to speak up and let our representatives know how we feel. No taxpayer money for abortion or any of these other bad bills that are coming our way. If we're united in purpose, we can win. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. And if we got to just add one last thing, if it's not enough time.
Sure.
When I was so discouraged in the 1980s about many of our losses, because it was back and forth a lot, even under Ronald Reagan, I remember my wife, Marie, she goes, the scripture, run with endurance the race fixed before you, fixing your eyes upon Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith. The idea of trusting God, even when it looks not hopeless, but dire, and that's what it looks, is the key. We love our opponents, do good to those who hate you, do good to those who persecute you, but run with endurance. And I think, again, this movement is the most, not just selfless, but it's all about forgiveness and a sense of reconciliation. That's why your ministry on the Silent No More Awareness Campaign and others are so important, because you reach out to women who have had abortion to say, we love you, we care for you. And I think the world needs to see more of that, because our message doesn't always get out. But those who are watching this, please pray as you've never prayed before. We will get through this. Don't be discouraged.
Well, thank you. And thank you, brothers and sisters, for joining us today on Just Ask Janet. And remember, there are some abortions only you can stop, and some lives only you can save. Until next time, Janet Morana, Executive Director of Priest for Life, and God bless.